The Serpent of Lake Vetrsjor, A Tale of Veldrith. The sun hung low over Jorvik, casting a cold silver light over the settlement and the surrounding snow-dappled woods. Winter had begun its slow retreat, but the air still held a sharp bite, and Lake Vetrsjor, a sprawling expanse of icy water that mirrored the sky, remained a place of quiet peril. The townsfolk had long respected the lake's temperament, treating it as both a provider and a threat. But now they feared it more than ever. Eira Thorsdottir stood on the rocky shore, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword, her breath plumed in the frosty air as she stared across the frozen water. The rumours had spread quickly. Something beneath the lake had awakened, something vast and angry. 3 fishermen had disappeared in the last 2 weeks, their empty boats found drifting near the shore, torn nets trailing like spider silk. The Jarl's council had pleaded for help, and Eira had answered the call. She had dealt with wolves, raiders, and even Skraeling warriors who mistrusted Jorvik's presence in Vinland. But a creature from the depths, that was a new kind of challenge. Behind her, the voices of the gathered villagers murmured with worry. Eira turned and raised her hand.
"Go back to your homes,"
she said, her voice cutting through the chill like a blade.
"Fear won't help me do what I've been hired to do."
The crowd hesitated before dispersing reluctantly, their faces etched with fear and doubt. Only one remained, a young boy with a shock of blonde hair and wide, curious eyes. He held a wooden fishing spear in his small hands.
"You shouldn't be here,"
Eira said, arching an eyebrow. The boy stepped forward defiantly.
"You can't fight the lake alone?"
"I've fought worse,"
Eira replied. Her voice was kind but firm.
"What's your name?"
"Sven,"
he said.
"My uncle was taken by it."
"I'm sorry."
Eira said, her tone softening. She knelt so she was at eye level with him.
"But I need you to trust me. This isn't a battle for little warriors."
Sven's face fell, but he nodded reluctantly. He handed her the fishing spear.
"Take it then. It's lucky. My uncle made it."
Eira accepted the spear with a small smile.
"Thank you. Now get home."
Sven lingered for a moment before turning and running back up the path toward the village. Eira stood, gripping the spear thoughtfully. It was a simple weapon, but there was something earnest in the boy's belief. She slid the spear into the leather straps on her back and turned toward the lake once more. The frozen lake stretched wide and still, its surface cracked in places where the ice had begun to melt. Eira knew that beneath that fragile crust lurked a world of shadows and teeth. She unslung her bow and nocked an arrow tipped with iron. A fishing boat waited nearby, tethered to a rock, the only vessel brave enough to still drift near the icy shore. She stepped into the boat and pushed off with her foot, the oar slicing the water as she moved into the center of the lake. The silence was almost reverent, broken only by the sound of the water lapping against the hull. Eira's pulse was steady, but her thoughts drifted. Vestinus should have been here. He had disappeared after the events at the glade, swallowed by some unseen purpose. Eira had long since given up hoping for news of his return. But there were moments, like now, when she felt his absence keenly. He had always been attuned to the strange, to the unnatural pulses of the ley lines. He would have sensed this monster before it surfaced. A sudden crack beneath her pulled her from her thoughts. She froze, her eyes scanning the water's surface. A deep, sonorous groan rippled through the lake, as if the water itself had spoken. Eira gripped her bow tightly. The ice shattered with an explosive force, sending shards flying into the air. Eira barely had time to react before the boat lurched violently, nearly capsizing. A massive, serpentine shape burst from the depths, a creature of glistening scales as black as night, its eyes like burning embers. Water streamed from its coiled body as it towered above her, its maw lined with dagger-sharp teeth.
"You're Mongonda's spawn,"
Eira muttered under her breath, raising her bow. The serpent roared, a sound that rattled her bones. She loosed her arrow, and it struck true, embedding itself in the creature's thick hide. The serpent thrashed in pain, sending waves crashing against the boat. Eira's knuckles whitened as she struggled to keep her balance. The creature lunged, its jaws snapping shut inches from where Eira had been standing. She dove to the side, her boots skidding across the wet deck as the serpent's head slammed into the boat, splitting the wood with a resounding crack. The boat began to sink, cold water rushing over her feet. Eira cursed and slung her bow over her shoulder, drawing her sword. The serpent circled her, its long body churning the water into a frothing maelstrom. Its head reared again, its burning eyes fixed on her. Eira didn't wait for it to strike. She lunged, driving her sword into the side of its neck. The blade bit deep, and the serpent recoiled with a deafening hiss, blood streaming into the lake. But the creature's strength was immense, and its tail lashed out, striking Eira hard across the chest. She was thrown from the boat, her body hitting the icy water with a bone-jarring impact. The cold stole the breath from her lungs as she sank beneath the surface. The weight of her armor dragged her down, but she kicked furiously, her instincts forcing her upward. She broke through the water's surface, gasping for air as she swam toward a floating piece of the wrecked boat. The serpent was circling again, its blood clouding the water. Eira grabbed the fishing spear Sven had given her, its simple point glinting in the pale light. She clung to the wreckage, her breath ragged as the serpent reared for another strike.
Come on, then,
She snarled, raising the spear. The serpent lunged, its jaws wide. Eira thrust the spear upward, driving it into the roof of the creature's mouth. The force of the impact shot pain through her arm, but the spear held. The serpent thrashed wildly, the spear buried deep in its skull. Its death throes churned the water around her, dragging her down again as its massive body writhed and coiled. Eira clung to the spear with all her strength, her vision swimming as the cold gnawed at her limbs. Slowly the serpent's movement slowed, its body sinking beneath the surface until the lake grew still once more. Eira dragged herself onto the shore, collapsing onto the cold, wet stones. She lay there for a moment, her chest heaving as she fought to catch her breath. The serpent's body lay half-submerged in the lake, a dark silhouette against the breaking dawn. Footsteps approached, and she forced herself to sit up as villagers rushed toward her, their faces a mix of awe and relief. Sven was at the front of the crowd, his eyes wide as he took in the sight of the fallen beast.
You did it,
he whispered. Eira managed a tired smile. She held out the broken fishing spear, its point splintered, but still embedded with the serpent's blood.
Your spear was lucky after all.
Sven beamed as the crowd began to cheer, though Eira's gaze drifted past them, toward the forest's edge. For a brief moment she thought she saw a familiar shape, a tall crimson figure watching from the shadows. She blinked, and it was gone. The cheers rose around her, but Eira's thoughts lingered on the empty space where Vestinus had once stood.
Soon,
she murmured, her voice lost beneath the sound of the waves.
You'll come back soon.
Thank you for listening to The Tales of Veldrith. Books 1 and 2 are now available in paperback and on Kindle. Visit mattytaylor.com for more details.